Welcome everyone to our November Tree Talks. This is a monthly webinar series that the Savannah Tree Foundation has been conducting to help educate the community on all the aspects of trees and just how many different ways that they actually are a part of our lives. This month's Tree Talk is entitled Longleaf Pine and the Fire Forest, and we have Randy Tate with the Longleaf Alliance speaking to us today. And just a quick little bit of background on who we are at the Tree Foundation. So we are an organization that's been around since 1982, and our mission is to protect and grow Chatham County's urban forest through tree planting, community engagement, and advocacy. And today is a little bit of that community engagement. The goal with this is to help educate the community and get people engaged talking about trees, especially while it's a little bit easier to do things virtual right now. And for today, we have Randy Tate. So Randy is the Fort Stewart Altamaha Longleaf Partnership Coordinator for the Longleaf Alliance, and he's been in this role for the last 7 years. And this involves leading a partnership focused on restoring and managing the longleaf pine ecosystem in Southeast Georgia. It's a really fascinating ecosystem too, I can attest to that. He has had a 30-year career in natural resource conservation management, working for the Nature Conservancy, the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and the Longleaf Alliance. He also has a master's degree in biology from UMass Boston. Much of his career has involved prescribed burning for forest health, and he was the president of the Georgia Prescribed Fire Council in 2017. He also has often photographed fire and has photographs that have appeared in many publications, which is really cool. Some of it's fantastic photography. With that, I'm going to stop my screen share and we're going to switch it over to Randy.
Okay, thanks very much, Jake. I really appreciate being part of the Tree Talk series, which has been great. I really enjoyed the being taken up into the canopy of a longleaf of a live oak the last time, so that was pretty special. We're not going to be taking you up into the top of a longleaf pine, but hopefully you will be learning a few things about longleaf and the longleaf forest, which is the real ecological gem. And so let's get started. Let me try to. Okay, I'll just put up with that little thing over there. Okay, longleaf pine and the fire forest. This is we'll be talking about the tree itself, but mostly about the ecosystem and all the different habitats that longleaf pine is the dominant tree in. And that's the real, as I said, ecological gem there. Longleaf pine, it's the forest that shaped and built the South. Longleaf pine, Pinus plustris, once dominated ecosystems in the southeastern United States from southeastern Virginia to eastern Texas. The longleaf pine ecosystem is fire dependent and covers a range of site conditions. And by site conditions, I mean whether it's extremely wet or a little wet or very dry or sandy, or what sort of site is the tree or in the ecosystem growing on. And there's a variety. It includes longleaf pine flatwoods. This is a photo at Fort Stewart, where essentially some of the best flatwoods on the planet are left, and Fort Stewart is well-managed trees and well-managed forest, and with fire. So it's very flat, embedded wetlands within these flatwoods, and just extremely rare plants. And you can see all the grasses in the understory, very, very diverse understory. But you also find longleaf up in the mountains of Georgia and Alabama as montane longleaf. So it's that's longleaf there and there and there and there. So it's quite different. We have a lot of longleaf pine sandhills in Georgia, and they grow along the eastern sides of many of the rivers in Georgia, where there's sand dunes that have been left from geological processes, and so those are quite distinct too. So looking back over the history of longleaf, a historical account of the pine woods. This is by William Bartram. He was the naturalist who traveled throughout the east and southeast, and wrote extensively about what he saw. He said, "We find ourselves on the entrance of a vast plain which extends west 60 or 70 miles. This plain is mostly a forest of the great long-leaved pine, the earth covered with grass, interspersed with an infinite variety of herbaceous plants, and embellished with extensive savannas, always green, sparkling with ponds of water." So a beautiful description, and we can find a little of that still left in Fort Stewart and some other areas. And he says long-leaved pine because the needles of a pine tree are actually modified leaves. So that's why long leaf. So take a look at this. This is a drawing from George Ions in 1726 of Savannah. And look what the forest. Look at the forest that surrounds it that he has drawn. Um, it's most likely longleaf pine, and I would think probably definitely longleaf pine, all surrounding here. And you can see it somewhat as described, open beneath and ranging. And you can still find some very old longleaf pine here in Savannah. If you go to the Armstrong campus of Georgia Southern University, there are out front along Abercorn, you can see some huge old longleaf pine. Just look for the very large cones beneath them. They're the largest cones of any pine tree, and the long needles. So that's a good place to see longleaf pine here in Savannah. Okay, in the first 400 years, that's in other words, the 400 years after the Europeans arrived here, longleaf occurred on an estimated 90 million acres at its peak, dominating on an estimated 60 million acres. Probably the largest area on the continent dominated by a single tree species, which is pretty amazing. And I think that's then and now. By the mid-1990s, over half of that forest was gone. By 1995, an estimated 3 million acres remained, most of it in poor condition. And by the way, in 1995, the two Auburn forestry professors, Auburn University, formed the Longleaf Alliance, Rhett Johnson and Dean Jerstad, and they had seen a great interest in longleaf growing, and yet some problems with planting and growing it, and so they formed the Longleaf Alliance to give that technical existence and expertise to landowners. So we've been going since then. All right, here's the range of longleaf. So it comes sweeping down through the plains, a little bit in Virginia, and through the coastal plains of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and then down in Peninsula Florida some. And then you've got the Mississippi River here, which separates this disjunct range here in East Texas and Louisiana. So that's it. The yellow areas are federally owned lands. Fort Stewart there, several national forests along the area too. So that's the range of land. And keep that range in mind because in another slide coming up, we'll look at something very similar. So, Europeans arrived and logging started, buildings, cities were being built, and the longleaf pine is an excellent wood. It is just really good. It's strong. It's beautiful when finished, and so it was cut down. And it was used to build most of the South's great cities: Savannah, Charleston, Richmond, Mobile, Atlanta, Williamsburg. But it was also shipped abroad. It was shipped north to New England. There's a lot longleaf pine um, under the bases of the Brooklyn Bridge. And that was used to build much of New York and New England also. But it also shipped abroad. There is longleaf pine in Balmoral Castle, the Queen's Castle in Scotland, and so it was used widely. Longleaf made beautiful and durable flooring. This is actually my office in it's an 1830s building. It's above Collins Quarters, or it's the same building with Collins Quarters, but this is heart pine, longleaf heart pine. Makes beautiful, beautiful flooring, and undoubtedly there are other more longleaf pine in the trusses and the rest of this building. So much of Savannah, if you have an 1800s building or so, you're going to have some longleaf pine in it. So all that logging led to decimation. So longleaf were really diminished in size. Agriculture took over. These fields were not replanted in longleaf. They were turned into ag fields and various things like that. So, and then used to build. And what was left, fire exclusion in what was left. There, as I'm going to be telling you more later about why fire is so essential to longleaf. When you take it out, it very much degrades the quality of the forest and the biodiversity in it. But back in the early part of the 20th century, the Florida Forest Service said woods fires are every man's enemy. Fire does not belong in the woods. Right now, the Florida Forest Service burns hundreds of thousands of acres a year because they know it's needed. The U.S. Forest Service said death rides the forest when man is careless. Now the Forest Service is also burning quite a bit. So what was left of longleaf was very degraded. And we know that fire is essential and part of that all longleaf forest and all the critters and animals within them have evolved with fire. We know that because we know Native Americans used fire frequently. There's lots of evidence of that, and there is, one of the things they did for it was to attract game. So they would burn an area, and when the sprouts came from the grasses and other plants, they're very nutritious, and animals would key in on that, and so the sprouts in a recently burned area of forest would attract game. And I have seen that myself. I worked for the Nature Conservancy in the Florida Keys for a few years, and I was involved in a burn on Big Pine Key. And right after we burned, I saw key deer coming into the recently burned areas and licking the ash. So some sort of mineral there must have been for them to want to do that. Now, thinking back to our range map of longleaf, this is a flash density map. In other words, it records the frequency of lightning strikes. And the higher, and this is the area with most lightning strikes in the US. And you overlay that map of longleaf on it, and you can see why. So we know that humans, Native Americans used fire, and those fires were not stopped. They spread enormously because there's no fire breaks, no fire departments, and things like that. So through both natural lightning strikes and human-caused lightning strikes, that's how the longleaf ecosystem has evolved. And there are many things that we can look at, traits of longleaf itself, that show us that it evolved with fire. One is that the seedlings, like right here, and there's a little one up here, they only germinate on mineral soil. So, you only get mineral soil in a forest by a fire sweeping through and clearing all the leaves and needles and other things, twigs off. So it won't germinate on a bed of leaves and needles. It needs this mineral soil, this dirt that's one adaptation. Another, thick bark. It has extremely thick bark around it. And then the long needles themselves, they'll burn down, but they won't burn into the top cambium, or anyway, the needles by being so long will protect the buds. So when you talk about taking fire out of the longleaf forest, it's like taking rain out of the rainforest. It just doesn't work. So it needs fire to be healthy. And the kind of fire that we're talking about are good, low-intensity fires. So these flame lengths here, this is at a place called the Moody Forest Wildlife Management Area along the Altamaha in Appling County, Georgia. So these are no more than 3 feet tall or so, and that's what you want. If you had not had fire in this area for a very long time, then you would get very high flame lengths, and you would kill some of the trees. Here, you're not killing anything. You're just burning off the tops of the different plants, and the roots are fine, and they will resprout. So. Another aspect that I want to talk about on longleaf is the old growth. old growth longleaf pine forest. Here's a historic photo from, I think it's Louisiana or Texas. And you can see how open these are, probably recent burn through here. And the trees are very, very large. And by old growth, we're talking about 200 to 300 years old. And above. So there's very little of that left. Very, very little. Of the original over 90 million acres of longleaf, now we have about 8,777 acres of old growth longleaf pine forest tracts remaining. And that there's probably less at this point. This is from a study in 2001, I think. So 56% of that can be found on Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. So that's where the mother lode of old growth is. That's in the panhandle of Florida. And I have seen that tract. It's not very impressive. It's growing on very poor sandy soils, and they are very small. They're just kind of don't look like you'd think they would. About a third is found in various privately owned forest tracts in southeast and southwest Georgia. Southwest Georgia being the Thomasville area, the Red Hills, and so not much left. There is old growth at Moody Forest Wildlife Management Area, and this is the one of the old growth stands with a fire going on. That's the closest place to Savannah to see old growth longleaf forest. It's about an hour and 30, 40 minutes from here. There are trails, so there's a parking lot and there are trails to walk. So I encourage anyone who's interested in seeing a nice stand of longleaf pine to go there. I worked for the Nature Conservancy of Georgia as Director of Science and Stewardship when this was purchased, and got to do some early burning in it, which was very tricky because it had not been burned for over 40 years. So when that happens, you have a duff buildup around the base of the trees where leaves and twigs and other things just build up over time, and actually they become like compost. So very rich, becomes very rich, and the roots of the old trees go up into the duff layer. And if you burned it the wrong way, if you burned it hot and let the fire sit on it for a while, you would kill those roots and kill the tree ultimately. So we had to burn it very carefully, with a lot of moisture in the ground and with what we call head fires that rushed over and didn't sit on top of the duff for a long time. Now it's in pretty good shape. It's been well managed. It's owned by the Georgia DNR and the Nature Conservancy jointly, and managed by the Nature Conservancy. I highly recommend going out to see that. You can see old growth longleaf and old growth bottomland hardwoods in one morning. They're so close. So and those bottomland hardwoods, cypress and tupelo, or they can be up to 600-700 years old. So it's wonderful, wonderful sight. Another place where you can see old growth longleaf is the Big Woods at Greenwood Plantation. This is in Thomasville, Georgia. So it's a little further away, but it's still worth it. Here the site is very rich, and so the trees get very tall and they're very impressive. It's a private property, but there is a public dirt road that runs through it, and so you could drive that road and see some really impressive woods. Okay, so we've had the decimation over time, and the Longleaf Alliance formed in 1995 because there was a great interest. Well, in 2005, everyone came together and created America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative, a range-wide plan for restoration of longleaf throughout the Southeast. One of the only instances I know of where people came together to across the range of an entire species to focus on restoring longleaf. So American Longleaf Restoration was initiated in 2005. It's still going on. It's a collaborative effort of multiple public and private sector partners that actively supports range-wide efforts to restore and conserve longleaf pine ecosystem. And the vision is to have viable longleaf pine ecosystems within the full spectrum of ecological, economic, and social values inspired through the voluntary involvement of motivated organizations. We have a 15-year goal, which it has been 15 years, of getting 3.4 longleaf acres from 3.4 to 8 million. We're not there yet, but we have made progress. So, and the Longleaf Initiative is run by a Longleaf Partnership Council, and it's composed of about 20 or 30 different groups that come together a couple of times a year, and we're really focused on getting up to that goal. And so the good news, so anyway, so America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative, one of the main things that they did was identify significant geographic landscapes and areas where there were what we call an anchor site, a large area of longleaf pine, and then areas around that that could either be also restored or connected to the anchor site. So this, you can see all these big dots are areas where they designated significant geographic landscapes where we'll focus restoration. Much of this restoration is being funded through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, through the Longleaf Stewardship Fund. And you can see right here, Fort Stewart, Altamaha, right here in Southeast Georgia, we get funding from them. And they've funded all of these folks, and a lot of burning and a lot of longleaf planting is getting done. So this is the area. So I'm the partnership coordinator for the Fort Stewart Altamaha Longleaf Restoration Partnership. It's also called a Local Implementation Team, LIT. And so this is our boundary. We go out to close to Dublin, Statesboro, out to Tifton, and there's Baxley, and then Brunswick, and just outside of Savannah. So our anchor site, the large area of well-managed longleaf, is Fort Stewart, but also along the lower Altamaha, there's many protected areas, mostly wildlife management areas that the state and other conservation groups have been working on purchasing and putting management into for years. There's the Moody Forest right there. So the funding that I get through Longleaf Stewardship Fund grants funds burn crews for various organizations who get fire on the ground. It funds longleaf planting, seedlings and planting cost, and it funds outreach to private landowners, technical assistance, and all sorts of conservation efforts. So that that's the area we work in and that I work in, and that's how we get the funding done. So America's Longleaf Restoration Initiative has helped halt the centuries-long decline and resulted in increased acres over the last decade. Now, it hasn't, as I said, we haven't reached our goal, but we're still trying, and it has resulted in halting the decline. So I think it's been successful. So, and hopefully will continue to be. So this is a project that I worked on last year, and very proud of it. I went to one spot at the Moody Forest Wildlife Management Area and took the same picture once a month. So we knew this was an idea of Carol Denhoff, who's our president of Longleaf Alliance currently, and she also put the photographs that I took together into this what's called a spark story. So we knew that the manager there was planning to burn in the spring, and so we wanted to show the changes within the forest. So this is, we call it the perennial forest. And since you have the link there, please use that yourself, and I will not be reading everything that's in here, but you can look at it yourself. So check out this tree here and this tree here to get your bearings. But so this is January. Once again, this tree and this tree will help you orient. It's called the dormant season. A lot of burning is done at this time of year, but it's you burn according to a prescription, which says what time of year you're burning, what kind of conditions, how wet, how dry, things like that. And so if you wanted certain sort of results, you could burn in the dormant season. So this would be January, and then I got over there and took the same picture in February, tree on here and tree here, and very similar conditions, still considered the dormant season. Same picture, but you see a little green up, like right in here in the center, and there some of the plants are getting green. It's in early spring, I think, last year, and this was the March picture, still would be considered the dormant season. Things are not growing, not greening up. A couple of the plants that would start showing at this time of year: birdfoot violet and gopher weed. And here you can see April spring's zooming in here with lots of green showing up. So that would be the growing season, and this would be a growing season burn. So this is from the same spot, two trees in May before the burn. And I know the land manager there well, Chuck Martin, and so he let me know when he was going to burn. And I got out there during the burn and took the same photo. Here's that tree and that tree. So once again, these low intensity fires sweeping through and stimulating the plants and the grasses. When you so many of these native things that have evolved with fire are stimulated by burns in the growing season, and they will fruit and seed and flower much better. So. Okay, and this is right after the burn. You can see the grass has been swept away. Uh, that's May. Doesn't take very long to start greening up again. This is in June. You can see the green up is starting all through here, and then July. So getting much greener. Really starts looking good in August. All the grasses are growing. Most of the grass in here is wiregrass. September and October are two of my favorite times in these forests because the grasses are really starting to seed and flower, and so it's looking like it should. October, see how much has come back. November and December. So this is that site where I had the pictures taken, and here I do some voiceover, but I'm not sure you're going to be able to hear it. Hopefully you can hear the crackling of the fire there. And this is what we call a backing fire. So the wind is coming from this direction on the left, and the fire is slowly backing into it. So that's keeps it under control. And this here, same spot, but this is a heading fire. So the wind is behind, is blowing the flames, and they're going faster and they get higher. So different. So that's a prescribed fire at the Moody Forest. Once again, this is a place you can go see and see the effects of the fire there. So I think that's it. That's all I had. So hopefully you have a couple of questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Randy. That was fantastic. We haven't gotten any questions yet. We'll wait just a minute to see if we do have any. But again, thank you so much. This webinar was recorded today, so we'll have that uploaded to our YouTube channel within the next day or so, and I'll send that link out. So please feel free to share for anyone that you think might enjoy that may have missed it. These webinars are so fun. It's so cool to learn about all these different aspects of trees, and I love Longleaf, so this was my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I just planted one this weekend, compliments of the, well, not compliments, but from the Savannah Tree Foundation, from the native trees.
One of the trees we had for sale. We try to promote those good native species. You know, pines get a bad rap. They're sort of the pit bull of trees, you know.
Those are the lob and slash, not the longleaf. So
yeah, exactly. You know, we always say right tree, right place. There's no such thing as a bad tree. So
right. So I've got a couple of different demonstration plantings that I've done since I've been here in Savannah at Oatland Island. You can see a small planting in their little gopher tortoise enclosure area. So we planted those, and that was back in 2014, and they're really doing really well. Very, very, very tall trees at this point. Also at Hunter Army Airfield, there's a little demonstration planting there. Those trees are also doing really well.
right.
And one interesting place to see longleaf is at the intersection of Skidaway and East 52nd. There's an old African American cemetery, and I counted 22 what I consider old growth trees there in that cemetery. So once again, if you go to look for them, just look for the big, huge cones that are underneath in the long, very long needles. So
great. And you said the sort of the largest forested area is the Moody Forest that's closest to Savannah?
that's the closest to see a really nice longleaf forest that's well managed. And it has public trails. So yeah, it's Moody Forest Wildlife Management Area. You can Google it and find a way out. It's a beautiful drive too. And if you could also go through Fort Stewart to get there, and that's where you see lots of beautiful longleaf, well managed.
Wonderful. Um, let's see. It looks like Joan has a question. Um, she said something about burns. She asked, what can the urban homeowner do to improve the health of their longleaf pines? I guess maybe, challenges with burning in urban areas and managing longleaf.
Yeah, well, there's not a much. I mean, longleaf has been used in landscaping, and once I planted one in my yard, but I'm never going to burn it because it's just really difficult to do and somewhat dangerous in an urban area. So, in some places they mow around longleaf pine just to keep the one of the main things that burning does is it eliminates competition. The longleaf pine will sit in what's called the grass stage for a long time, and if it gets a lot of competition from other trees overgrowing it and shading it out, it just sits there for a very long time. It doesn't shoot up and to give a good growth spurt. But if you have one, does Joan have one planted by any chance?
It sounds like, yeah, they have some longleaf that they're looking to improve the health of.
Okay. Well, one thing you can do is get in touch with me, and I can come see it and see if I can give you any assistance. I'm here. Part of my job is giving technical assistance to landowners, and so that would be I'd be glad to come look and see if I can give you some ideas. But uh, the longleaf that's planted in a yard or in a very urban area is very hard to burn, but mowing around it to reduce competition and things like that would be possible. But yeah, my email is simply randy@longleafalliance.org.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, kind of trying to mimic the effects of fire without the fire
Right,
itself.
right, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
All right. Well, yeah. And if anyone else has any questions, obviously feel free to reach out to myself or Randy. But Randy, thank you again so much. This was
sure.
wonderful. And as I said, we'll have this recording up in the next day or so. So feel free to share with anyone else if you'd like.
And you're welcome to put my contact information on it too. So because I'm here
Okay,
to
we'll
help
do that. Yeah,
folks.
we'll put that up in the comment section of the video so that folks
Great.
can reach out if they have any questions.
Okay.
Wonderful. All
Thank you.
right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you again, Randy. We appreciate the presentation. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I've enjoyed doing it. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.